Wow, turns out Kurt Cobain didn't end himself. Which, by the way, was a conspiracy theory that existed since his death. Literally, that the entire time, from his death to today, people believe that he didn't do it himself.
30 years ago, Kurt Cobain's passing was ruled to be self-inflicted, but now forensic experts are saying, hey, this might have all been staged.
More than 3 decades after his death shocked the music world, questions are once again swirling around the final hours of Curt Cobain. Nirvana's lead singer was found dead April 5th, 1994, inside of a greenhouse above his Seattle garage. And Seattle police, they closed the case after the King County medical examiner ruled it suicide, citing a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Shotgun wound, to be even more specific. So why am I talking about it now? Well, an unofficial private team of forensic scientists says that
there was literally a documentary back in the day, in the 90s. I owned it. I had a VHS of it here. Of course, only in English with some German subtitles, of course. And yeah, back then there was a conspiracy theory that he was, ended by someone else, that it all was staged and shit like that. This is not new. The people had the exact same concerns because of the same things that he will bring up. I can guarantee it. I can guarantee it 100%. We will talk about the same shit.
evidence tells a very different story.
And I mean, this case has been closed for longer than I've been alive. But in April of 1994, Kurt Cobain was found unresponsive in his Seattle home. A firearm injury was discovered, and authorities ruled it a self-inflicted one. A note was then found nearby, and toxicology reports showed high levels of substances in his system. And again, the King County Medical...
Wait. Why is it changing from written like that to written like that? Is this even written by the same person? It might be. I see the I here. It's basically kind of identical like this one and this one, but it's an I, so it's not hard. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not even sure if that was written by him. Or all written by him. This is weird.
And toxicology reports showed high levels of substances in his system. And again, the King County Medical Examiner determined the manner of death was self-inflicted. And the Seattle Police Department agreed. Case closed seemingly, and that was the end of it, or so we thought at least. And look, I am no conspiracy channel, but recently there have been official news reports about a new independent forensic review of this case. And some of the claims made are strange enough where I felt like I should probably cover this. So today we're going to be going through what's being claimed and what the authorities are saying in response. Typically, I start by explaining, who the person we're talking about today is, but most people know who Kurt Cobain was.
Yeah, and if you don't, then are you living under a rock? People, number one, still listen to his music. People still wear t-shirts of his band. He was one of the, if not the most famous... Actually? Is he almost as famous as Michael Jackson was in the 90s? Wow, I never thought about that, actually. But it might actually be the case. Definitely, he was one of the big ones.
Lead singer of Nirvana and an absolute musical genius. But back in 1994, Cobain had been struggling, and we know he had chronic pain and depression. Just weeks earlier, there had been a serious medical incident.
Wait, chronic pain? I didn't know about the pain at all. Where did that come from? I knew that he was taking the drugs because he was feeling like a drug addict, but he wasn't. So he started using the drugs, which makes not really any sense, but artists and actual artists, not the people that call themselves artists and have their daddies pay for everything they do.
overseas, and police previously removed firearms from his home after concerns of his own safety. And the medical incident we're talking about involved Cobain taking an OD level amount of substances before being found by his wife Courtney. Then a few weeks later,
But here's the thing, which was said even back then, that if you are an addict, you develop a tolerance for the substance you're using, which is 100% true. And I can completely vouch for it, because when my neck injury was really, really bad, I took narcotics, prescribed narcotics, and I started with the lowest doses. And after a couple of months, they weren't working anymore. Not really. So we doubled. We went one doses higher, and that worked. A couple of months later, that kind of stopped working. So yeah, I'm literally in the same boat here. Narcotics. I for the same level of, dampening the pain, I would have to take more and more narcotics at this point, and that's not good. That's not good. Really not good.
Courtney called the police to say that Cobain was locking himself in his room with a firearm. But when police arrived, he said he was actually trying to avoid his wife. And again, both of these scenes happened just the police arrived, he said he was actually trying to avoid his wife. And again,
Okay. Makes sense, because there were problems in a marriage. Big problems. I don't remember what it was, because 30 years ago. So, yeah.
both of these scenes happened just the month before he passed. And I'm mentioning them because they've been used as proof that Cobain was leading up to his passing. But they've also been used as proof that not everything was good in his home life. So on April 8th, an electrician installing security lighting...
You have literally two drug addicts. Two drug addicts in the same household. Of course, that shit is not going well. I mean, that's... Only because they are having money doesn't mean that shit is going well. They are fucking drug addicts.
Discovered him in a room above the garage at his Lake Washington Boulevard home. At first, he thought that Cobain was asleep. Then, he realized something was seriously wrong. Authorities later determined he likely passed away around April 5th, and a handwritten note addressed to his childhood imaginary friend was discovered nearby. And officially, the case was classified as a
Wait, his child and imaginary friend? I've never heard of an imaginary friend, ever. I mean, in Curt Cobain's case, I've never heard of that. That's the first time in my entire life I heard about that. What's going on? This doesn't make any sense.
Inflicted passing. But back then, not everyone accepted that. And that was partly due to the mess that happened in the week leading up to his passing. Because for 6 days in April 1994, Curt Cobain was missing. One of the biggest rock stars in the world was essentially completely off the radar. Police were looking for him, his wife was looking for him, and she even hired a private investigator. But on April 1st, he called...
Yeah, that makes no sense. And I also don't remember that. Why don't I remember that? I think I should remember something like that, because that's actually big. Missing for 6 days? That's a long time.
Love from Los Angeles, and she later told Seattle newspaper, he said, "Courtney, no matter what happens, I want you to know you made a really good record." And according to Courtney, that was the last time they ever spoke. He then flew back to Seattle, and on a flight, he happened to sit right next to the Guns N' Roses bassist Duff McKagan. McKagan then later said that he felt something was off, and quote, "All of my instincts told me something was wrong." After learning he left his treatment, Love canceled his credit cards and hired a private investigator, Tom Grant, to track him down. Meanwhile, Cobain was reportedly seen around Seattle on April 2nd and April 3rd. On April 4th, his mother filed a missing persons report, telling police that she feared he might harm himself. And according to the police timeline, on April 5th, he returned to his home and went into the greenhouse above his garage. He then wrote a note, he left his wallet open, possibly for identification, and then sometime around that day, he passed away. He wouldn't be discovered for 3 more days though. And almost immediately, questions started popping up. A local journalist then started...
Yeah, this kind of makes no sense. But then again, it's 30 years ago. And a drug addict, so yeah. It's not surprising that things make no sense.
doing public access segments, suggesting the case didn't make sense. With one of the main points being there
So they- they're saying the same thing I do. Wow, guess I'm a genius.
wasn't enough blood on the scene. A private investigator later said that he believed there were inconsistencies in the timeline and in the evidence. Documentaries were then made and books were then written, but by the late 90s, the story had turned into a full-blown cultural debate. Then you had a documentary created called Curt and Courtney.
I think that's the one I watched that I had, yeah. On VHS. I had it on VHS. It's gone for decades now.
Which then explored the theory. Then in 2014, on the 20th anniversary, Seattle police reviewed the case again. They developed rolls of film that hadn't been processed back in 1994. They re-examined the scene photos, and once again, they reaffirmed the original conclusion. Officially, nothing changed. But here's the thing, the conspiracy never really went away. And now, in 2026, it's back. Because a new independent forensic team says they've looked at the same materials and reached a very different conclusion. And this is where it starts getting weird again. So here's what's different this time. In early 2026, multiple...
Before we get into that, wouldn't it be, better to release the photos so people can look at it themselves? And yes, I know, not a live dude. I know. You can censor that part, but you can still show everything else. It's literally what we have on YouTube. You censor the bad things and show everything else. That's not hard. And yeah, I think that would be the smartest thing. But who am I?
News outlets reported that an independent research team had taken another look at the case. And I know, I'm talking about a private forensic group, but these are peer-reviewed, published findings, meaning a whole bunch of smart people who specialize in this kind of thing looked at it and gave it 2 thumbs up. So it seems short-sighted to just dismiss this. They reviewed crime scene photos, autopsy findings, and toxicology records. And after doing that, they claim the evidence fits a staged scene. Not a self-inflicted one, a staged one. That's a massive claim. To put it lightly,
well, seeing what we found in the Epstein files, would anyone actually believe that that shit is only going on for, the time Epstein was around? And by the way, Epstein was around back then too. He was just way, way younger. But, do we really believe that shit like that wasn't going on back then too? They wanted him on their side, and he said no, and then, they did what they did. That's just, things I pull out of my behind, but, it's a possibility. It's not a likely one, might be completely something else.
Michelle Wilkins, one of the researchers, said that the forensic specialist Brian Burnett reviewed the materials for several days and concluded the death was more consistent with homicide. That
While we're at it, I just remembered something from the documentary. The documentary went so far to say that they literally found the guy that ended Cobain. But I have zero memory who it was and how they got to him. I watched that thing over 20 years ago, last time, so I have no idea, no clue whatsoever.
is massive. So here's what they're arguing. They claim the amount of substances in his system would have left him physically incapacitated. We're talking like 20x the OD limit, so that tracks. And according to their
20 times as much? Yeah. I can see that.
Argument, someone in that condition would struggle to coordinate movement, let alone operate a firearm. Wilkins says that Cobain would have been in a near comatose state and barely able to...
I remember just being on my really strong pain meds, and I had problems walking. I was moving when I just going for the toilet and taking a piss. I had to grab the door frame so I wouldn't fall. And now imagine 20 times that doses. And that doses wasn't even an overdose. I wouldn't be able to walk. I would at max crawl. So yeah, take that however you like
to breathe. Secondly, they point to what they describe as oxygen-related organ damage. They argue that certain signs of the autopsy are more consistent with someone who stopped breathing due to substances rather than someone who died instantly from a firearm injury. And then they point to the scene. They describe it eerily clean. They question why his hand, which was found wrapped around the part of the firearm, didn't show any kind of visible blood splatter as they expected. Wilkins said, in quote, "There is no universe where that hand is not covered in blood." They also questioned the organization of the substance kit found nearby, saying it looked way too neatly arranged. Their argument is essentially someone under extreme physical duress would not carefully cap needles and put equipment away. They then argue that the top.
That's right. That's absolute right. Yeah. If you're so high that you barely can move properly, you don't put shit away properly. That's not a thing. If you ever were really, really drunk or high, then you know what I mean. You aren't able to do precise things with your hands or any movement at all.
Top portion reads like someone expressing frustration about music and fame. Then they claim the final lines appear visually different, larger, more rushed handwriting, and suggest.
I mean, it is. And that's why I wonder if it's even all from Cobain.
That this could indicate tampering. And I mean, that is interesting because it seems like they're implying he wrote the letter about leaving music behind and someone else added onto it. So, not gonna lie here, this looks weird. Looking at this note.
By the way, Kurt Cobain in at least one interview said that his music comes from a place of pain, and people, jamming out to it, dancing, and loving it so much makes him kind of feel weird. It doesn't align with his feelings, about his music and where it comes from. So this would actually make sense that he wants to stop making music. And by the way, he also was a painter. He painted, he drew, and he was really good. I have seen some of his art. It's great. He actually was a fucking genius. An artistic genius. And like every artistic genius, he had his problems. The usual, right?
I see what they mean. Suddenly, the writing gets really big and it looks a little different. But the team says they asked for the case to be reopened and authorities have responded. So the Seattle Police Department says the death was ruled self-inflicted and that remains their position. So the King County Medical Examiner's Office said they are open to reviewing new evidence, but they've seen nothing that would warrant reopening the case. So now we have two positions. The findings here are reanalysis of existing stuff that have been reviewed before. Sadly, without a new piece of evidence, they might not just be able to get the case reopened. The other side is the Seattle Police Department has had requests for this case to be reopened since the conclusion of it 30 years ago.
Yeah,
the conspiracy side of the story has been around for almost as long as the official ruling. But a team of experts publishing a peer-reviewed analysis is still a lot more solid than 3 decades of conspiracy theories. But a lot of the stuff in the new report matches with a whole bunch of the theories that I mentioned earlier, like the public access host who said the police reports just didn't line up. He claimed there wasn't enough visible blood for what had happened, which is pretty similar to what the recent analysis said. Then you have Tom Grant, a private investigator who had been officially hired by Courtney Love during the chaos before Cobain's passing. And afterward, he publicly said that he believed the crime scene was staged. And his arguments focused on.
Oh, I completely don't remember that thing ever happened. Because one of the conspiracy theories was, or part of it was that his wife had him, ended. That's that was one of the big things back then.
A few big things that are, once again, also in the official report. He questioned whether someone with that level of substances in their system could physically coordinate pulling a trigger. And he also questioned the lack of clear fingerprints on certain items. Tom Grant was also the guy who pointed to the things like tour money and industry contracts as.
Yeah, if he would. Wait, what? No clear fingerprints? That makes no sense. His fingerprints would be everywhere. At least they should be. Especially on the tools he used, right? I mean, the gun and the set with the drug paraphernalia. You know, the things he used. Yeah, that makes zero sense. And what about the letter? Does the letter not have his... Also no fingerprints? That makes no sense. Absolutely no sense.
Financial motives. Then there's the documentaries. Nick Broomfield's film, Curt and Courtney explored the murder theory in the late 90s. That film mentions one of the most popular theories, that Courtney Love orchestrated everything. And I mean, it could make sense that people thought that she had something to do with it, because especially during this time, they were always in the news for their music, but also their relationship issues.
Reports of frequent heated arguments surfaced, some escalating into physical altercations. On March 18th, police were called to their home in Seattle after an explosive fight. Cobain had locked himself in a room with a gun, threatening to take his own life. Officers managed to de-escalate the situation and seized several firearms from the house.
Even their daughter, Frances, once said, "I always knew their relationship was toxic. I don't promote having a fix-it baby," which is what I was, to fix their problems. That is so sad for a kid to say. But there...
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's really sad. It's really sad, man. I feel sorry for her. I actually do. That's really bad.
There are a lot of theories as to why she would. Some people think that, you know, she was the handler. Others point to the fact that she gained his estate after he passed. But it is also very important to mention that Courtney Love did sign over the estate to Curt's daughter, Frances, in 2012. But as of February 2026, his passing remains officially classified as self-inflicted. So whether this new report changes anything in the future, we don't know. And look, did Curt Cobain openly have issues with depression and substances? Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
But I don't think that means that we should just ignore details that look very weird. And again, in this video, we are absolutely not accusing anyone of anything. We are just looking at the public details. But regardless, someone who's thinking about taking their own life can still be hurt by someone else. Those two things don't cancel each other out. But unfortunately, no one really knows what happened to him. Not 100%. But it doesn't seem like the police department is going to look into it any further, at least for now. And honestly, that's kind of just a painful ending that some people still struggle to accept. And that's maybe why we're still talking about it. But regardless, I'll keep you guys updated if the Seattle Police Department opens this case back up. But in the meantime, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
And I want you guys to keep one thing in mind. He used a shotgun. If you have ever seen an actual shotgun shooting something, you know the things are fucking exploding. So there not being a lot of blood is very suspicious. Very, very suspicious. It makes zero sense. If you use it on his head, his head would mostly be gone. So it makes no sense that there's not a lot of blood. And there should be a lot of brain everywhere. Just saying.